Hi everyone. Today I'm here to talk to you about the A of the LGBTQIA+ community, or asexuality. So asexuality is defined as the absence of sexual attraction, meaning asexual people, or aces for short, experience a lack of sexual attraction. Asexuals are approximately 1 to 6% of the population. Often, asexuality is labeled as sexual orientation because it is regularly understood in terms of patterns of sexual attraction rather than experiences around sex. The definition above uses language from the sexual orientation model to argue asexuality as a sexual orientation, focusing it on the lack of sexual attraction. Asexuality is a spectrum. With the definition of it being a lack of sexual attraction, there are individuals who experience minimal amounts of sexual attraction or sexual attraction only in certain situations. Gray sexuality is a term used to describe people who primarily live asexual but can experience or have experienced sexual attraction and want to acknowledge that in their label. Gray sexuality itself is an umbrella term and can refer to many situations, such as a person who feels weak sexual attraction, a person who goes through phases of feeling sexual attraction, or a person who feels attraction but doesn't know if it's sexual attraction. Whether people choose to use the label or not is up to them. Some people find it useful to differentiate how they feel sexual attraction from how most others feel. Demisexuality is a term used for people who only experience sexual attraction after a bond has been developed. These people do not feel sexual attraction to strangers or celebrities. Some people object to this term because they feel it shames people who feel sexual attraction initially based on looks or voice or chemistry. However, it is important to note that the term demisexual does not describe whether a person has sex, nor does it suggest a person has certain views about sex. All it is a way to describe how that person experiences sexual attraction. In a 2011 internet survey, 3,436 people on the asexual spectrum answered the question, "How do you identify on the asexual spectrum?" 64.2% said asexual, 20.6% said demisexual, 26.3% said gray asexual, and 5.3% said other. The asexual umbrella encompasses both these terms, and most people in the ace community are accepting of both gray sexual and demisexual people. Asexuality is not the same as celibacy or abstinence, as in it is not a choice the person is making. Celibates often still have sexual attraction to other people and still have sexual desire, yet do not engage in sexual activity, while asexuals may still engage in sexual activity with little to no sexual attraction. Sexual behavior and identity are not dependent on each other, and therefore, just because an asexual person has sex, it doesn't make them any less asexual. Also, asexual people may have sex for many reasons, like to procreate, to feel close to a partner, or to relax. There are 3 general dynamics amongst ace people when it comes to sex: sex favorable, sex indifferent, and sex adverse/sex repulsed. For example, the character Georgia War, who is a romantic asexual in the book Loveless by Alice Osman, states, "Picturing myself having sex with anyone, guy, girl, whoever, didn't interest me. No, it was more than that. It was an immediate fucking turnoff." So Georgia falls under the sex averse/sex repulsed category. Well, another character in Loveless, Sunil, who is homo-romantic asexual, states they are very indifferent about sex. In a 2011 online survey, 3,436 self-identifying asexual spectrum people answered questions about their attitudes towards having sex. They were allowed to pick more than one answer. 17% said I'm completely repulsed by the idea of myself having sex. 40.1% said I'm somewhat repulsed by the idea of myself having sex. 35.7% said I am indifferent to the idea of myself having sex. 26% said I would not be willing to have sex. 35.9% said I will be willing to compromise and have occasional sex in a relationship. 17% said I would be willing to compromise and have regular sex in a relationship. 6.9% said I enjoy having sex. It is important to remember that there is no one way to be asexual, and no single definition can explain everyone's asexual experience. It is also important to remember asexuality is defined as little to no sexual attraction, not the absence of sex itself. Many asexual people still desire romantic connections and romantic relationships. They still want to fall in love. Take the character Florence from the show Sex Education.
I don't want to have sex.
Okay. Do you want to have a seat? Not having sex is a valid choice, and you shouldn't have sex unless you...
No, I don't want to have sex at all. Ever with anyone. I think I might be broken.
Okay. Why don't you start by telling me how you feel when you think about having sex?
I don't feel anything. I have no connection to it. It's sort of like I'm surrounded by a huge feast with everything I could want to eat, but I'm not hungry.
Do you know what asexuality is? It's when someone has no sexual attraction to any sex or gender. Sex just doesn't do it for some people.
But I still want to fall in love.
Well, some asexual people still want romantic relationships, but they don't want the sex bit. And others don't want either. You know, sexuality is fluid. Sex doesn't make us whole. And so, how could you ever be broken?
This is an example of a romantic asexual, someone who is asexual but still experiences romantic attraction. Many asexual people adopt something called the split attraction model, which separates sexual attraction and romantic attractions. In a 2011 online survey, 3,436 self-identified asexuals answered the question, "What is your romantic orientation?" 43.8 answered, "I'm romantically attracted to men." 32.2 answered, "I'm romantically attracted to women." 20.1 answered, "I'm romantically attracted to non-binary people." 20.7 answered, "My romantic orientation is fluid." 20.2 answered, "I am unsure." 18.2 answered, "I'm romantically attracted to no one." 12.1 answered, "I'm demi-romantic." 10.6 answered, "I'm gray romantic." 6.8 answered other, and 6.2 answered, "There's no difference between romantic and non-romantic attraction to me." There are endless combinations of sexual and romantic orientations, and it's not just asexual people who use this model. In Loveless, the character Jess is aromantic bisexual, meaning they feel little to no romantic attraction and are sexually attracted to two genders. Here are some romantic attractions that asexual people often adopt. The same prefixes people use to describe their sexuality can also be used to describe their romantic orientation. There's heteroromantic, homoromantic. The character in Loveless, Sunil, is homoromantic, stating, "I still want to have relationships with guys and masculine folks, but I feel very indifferent about sex because I've never looked at men or any gender and felt sexual attraction to them." There's biromantic, panromantic, demiromantic, which is people who sometimes develop romantic attraction to someone after becoming familiar with and emotionally fond of the person. There's also gray romantic, people who experience romantic attraction less often, to a lower degree, or under different circumstances. And there's aromantic. So aromantic people do not experience romantic attraction, but just because aromantic people do not have an interest in romantic contact does not mean they are not capable of forming strong relationships. They often prioritize friendships and are friend-focused. As Georgia War, the main character in Loveless, who is aromantic, comes to terms with her identity, she realizes love between friends can be just as deep as romantic love. The split attraction model and the different types of attraction decentralize the assumption that all intimate needs are sexually driven. Attraction takes different forms and is definitely not limited to what people experience as sexual attraction. To disregard this fact can contribute to the marginalization and erasure of asexual experiences. Asexual people's sexuality, romance, and personal life is rich and full of many different relationships, the kind which depend on their romantic attraction. Aces have the same emotional needs as everyone else and are just as capable as forming intimate relationships. Asexuality also cuts across many other sexualities. In a 2011 internet survey, out of 3,436 self-identified asexual individuals, 10.2 identified as transgender. Asexual communities also have many gender fluid members or gender-neutral members as well. In 2014, the Asexual Visibility and Education Network Community Census reported only 75% of the 10,880 respondents identified as woman/female or man/male, and one study found that out of 66 asexual participants, 18 chose identities that were non-binary. Yet, despite this, many asexual people feel excluded from queer spaces. In contrast to homosexuality, which is seen as something that just shouldn't be, asexuality is often seen as something that just doesn't exist. It is seen as impossible. A character, Lloyd in Loveless, even voices this opinion, saying, "I saw the fucking flyers you were handing out at the Freshers' Fair. Asexual and bigender and whatever, you're just gonna let in anyone who thinks there's some made-up internet identity." This is why asexuality is often called the invisible orientation, and why so many people who are asexual struggle to find the right terminology for their experiences. When Georgia is first told about asexuality, she is familiar with the term, but doesn't know the depths of it because it's not something that has a lot of recognition or representation. She says, "No, I definitely heard of asexuality. I'd seen a few people talking about it online, and many people had it in their Twitter or Tumblr bios. Sometimes I even came across a fanfic with an asexual character. But I've hardly ever heard people use the word in real life, or even on TV, or in movies." Because of this erasure, many asexuals don't know they are asexual. In fact, we see this in Loveless with Georgia's cousin Ellis, who states she's jealous Georgia has this figured out so early, because she wasted a lot of time forcing herself to be involved in relationships like others were. Ace people face a lot of prejudice based on their sexuality. They are asked intrusive questions about their lives and are often met with denial about their identity. People who identify as asexual are often met with comments like, "Well, you just haven't met the right person." In fact, when Georgia comes out to two of her best friends separately, she is met with two versions of the same question. How do you know if you haven't tried? And how do you know you'll never feel that way about anyone? Asexuality can also be mistaken as sexual desire disorders, and medical professionals can encourage aces to have sex. Not to mention partners can pressure them as well. Also, asexuality is rarely deemed a feasible excuse when it comes to the refusal of sexual advances. So often, it is seen as something to be fixed, with Georgia herself even saying, "I wanted him to just do it. I wanted him to rip the plaster off, yank the bone back into shape, fix me." But asexual people's lack of sexual attraction is not a problem to be fixed. Asexual people do not have an intrinsic need for sex, and that does not limit their emotional needs or emotional capacity for close relationships, whether those be romantic or platonic. It is important to remember that asexuality, like any other sexual orientation, it is widely varied in terms of experiences, intersecting identities, and expressions. The Asexual Visibility and Education Network is made up of more than 2,500,000 members, 1,060,000 plus members who were on non-English forums as of January 1st, 2017. They all have their own experiences, own preferences, and own definitions of what being asexual means to them. After all, there really is no one way to be asexual. Thank you.